Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. My guest today is the co-founder and partner of Mobility Blueprint. His name is Rafael Chldress, and he's going to be sharing with us some insights on not only what they do, but also the overarching educational issues that we're having in this country. Rafa, thanks for coming to the show, man.
Hey, Abe. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, listen, so let's jump into it, man. So tell me, talk to us. How'd you get to Austin? How'd you get into this company? What are you doing?
Well, I grew up in Austin, and I moved back after 15 years of being in Brooklyn. And a good friend of mine, Doyle Valdez, who's a former Austin school board president, found out that I was back in Austin, and he invited me to lunch. And he's a former school board president and a real thought leader and very well-respected person in Texas and abroad. And he said, "Hey, Rafa, I know you have a background in technology," which I do. And he said, "Can I invite you to lunch?" I was like, "Yeah, man, it'd be great to hang out," because his mom and my mom, when my mom came from Spain and in the late 60s, early 70s, they were tailors together. So we knew each other, although Doyle's a little bit older than me. It's kind of funny because he's like 6 years older than me.
Right.
And when you're a kid...
That's forever.
He's like an adult.
Yeah, that's forever. It's a generation.
But now we're the same generation, essentially.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had lunch, and he said to me, "So, Rafa, do you know what student mobility is?" And I was kind of in a joking mood, and I said, "I don't know. Is it like the Jeffersons moving on up to the east side?" And he goes, "No, that's not what it is." And so he said, student mobility is this pernicious problem that's happening nationwide, mostly urban centers, but not just urban centers. So many people have moved to the suburbs and so on, and but it's nationwide, from New York City, L.A., Austin, all over, Texas, where we are now in Austin. And he said, basically, children are leaving school during the school year for reasons other than promotion. And it's wreaking havoc on school districts.
Now, when you say other than promotion, you mean like a parent got a promotion at a job? What kind of promotion do you mean?
Well, so it's kids that aren't, you go from elementary to middle school or to high school, that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
No, kids are moving during the course of the school year. And Abe, it's happening in ways that are having a profound effect on school districts. And we'll dive into that, but it affects a child's individual well-being. It affects school districts, individual schools, and of course it affects the community as well. And so it's a massive problem. And so as Doyle was telling me about it, I became more and more interested. And so we spent a whole year really thinking out what the problem was and how we could potentially address it in a proactive manner. And proactive is going to be the main adjective that I'm going to use throughout this, because it's about being proactive.
Right.
We came upon a company that is the only company in the U.S. that is dealing proactive with student mobility. And to give you an idea of how much of a problem it is, in Dallas last year, 33,000 kids moved during the course of the school year. 33,000 kids.
Wow.
And on average, they lose 6 days of school. So if you just do the math.
Yeah, how much a day is that for the district in Texas?
A very, very, very conservative number is $40 a day per child.
So 6 days is $240 times 33,000 kids.
Yeah, you're talking about a lot of money.
A lot of money.
And then if you think about it, more importantly, it is about the lost days of school.
Sure.
So when you're trying to hit your numbers, and of course, legislatures now throughout the country are are putting all sorts of rules and regulations. For example, in Texas, there's the A through F law. So school districts are now graded according to 3 different categories about how well they're doing. And so, the old days when you and I were kids, and school districts and teachers were just about teaching us.
Right.
It's much more laborious, and in many ways that's a good thing. Obviously we want to make sure that the kids that we're bringing up are able to perform at their optimal best in education, because they're going to be the workers of tomorrow, and they're going to be building their communities in Austin and Dallas and Houston and San Antonio and South Texas and New York City and LA. So you want to make sure that these children have a basic understanding of how they're going to be in the workforce, and citizens and taxpayers and all those things going forward. Having said that, they don't necessarily they're not giving more money to school districts.
No, and that was going to be my next question, because I went through your literature, which was impressive, and then I also cross-referenced it on Google to make sure whatever, you weren't blowing smoke.
Yeah,
and 91.6% of kids in the San Antonio district, SAISD, are economically disadvantaged, and yet we're still we're not teaching vocations anymore. We don't teach shop anymore. We don't teach metal or wood or any kind of trade. It's like we just keep teaching to the test. Are you finding that in your experience?
No, not. I mean, I think that was the case more about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're definitely, and even within the A through F law, kids can get certified in learning skills and crafts and trades and those sorts of things as well.
Okay.
And there's even high schools, for example, Dr. Cruz in Austin ISD, who's just a wonderful man and really cares about what he's doing. And these lower performing schools, they've incentivized kids, for example, like Reagan High School is one of the schools here, that kids, and many of these are, economically disadvantaged, as you were pointing out, many of them kids of color, who are able to get college credits during the course of the school year. So, in other words, when they graduate from high school, they can potentially have 2 years of college already. So, larger macroeconomic things about the extent to which kids are getting into debt, just to get an undergraduate degree. An undergraduate degree is like super expensive now.
Yes, it is.
But within these school districts, and they're doing it in other communities, but I do think that Austin ISD is a model in the country about kids getting college training. So they're not in as much debt when they graduate from college.
Wouldn't that be
because
nice?
They're going for free.
Yeah.
But also you can be a master carpenter, electrician.
Well, and that's
all these different skills.
And that's the thing. And I want to ask. I got a question about the A to F thing really fast. But just to piggyback really fast, I don't think these statistics have changed in 30 years, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if any more than 20% of the population actually tries college, much less graduates and then goes on to postgraduate work. Is that still the case or no?
I don't actually know the numbers. I can tell you anecdotally that the numbers of kids that go to college probably have not changed so significantly since you and I were kids,
right.
which was the 1900s.
Which was 1919.
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson was president. That's why I went to school for free.
It was the last millennium.
It was the last millennium, a millennium ago. And ask, yeah, it's really. I feel like it was a millennium ago. Well, let me. So the A through F, the HB 22 that we talked about a second ago, the A through F grade. Now that's not to be confused with No Child Left Behind or any of that.
No,
okay.
No. Basically, it started off in Florida, and school districts are being graded the same way that a kid is graded, A through F. But they do it in 3 different categories. And then one of the good things is that at least they're not just being graded according to just individual, but school districts and kids within that within the demographics are being compared and contrasted according to their peers. So at least that's a good sign. Look, I'm not saying that it's a good thing. It's not my place to say it's a bad thing, but it is what it is, and it's something that we have to deal with. And so what Doyle and I, my partner is Doyle Valdez, wonderful guy. If you ever meet him, please be sure to introduce yourself. He's just a wonderful thought leader. And
he'll be like, you're the asshole that interviewed Rafa. Good work, dude.
But in any event, he really is a real thought leader, and he just really cares about kids and kids' well-being.
Sure.
And so all the A through F law and what we've tried to impress upon school districts is that you've got to hit your numbers.
Right.
You've got to make sure that kids are in class to be able to be taught. And what we're finding out is that that student mobility is really hampering the well-being and the efficacy of school districts. We are, as a community, failing our families and our kids. We're putting them behind the 8 ball. And by the way, it is. I will go on record as saying that it is not fair that school districts are being held accountable for lowering student mobility in the A through F law.
Okay.
School districts are being graded, if you will, by whether they lower student mobility and whether they have continuously enrolled kids.
Okay.
And these are larger macroeconomic problems that are going on in society, affordable housing and so on.
Well, that was the thing that just to back up a second, because the numbers are staggering. When I looked at your literature and then I looked up online as well, I mean, the average district is losing, what, $15 million a year? No,
so what you're looking at, I'm going through one of my presentations now because I want to make sure that your guests, I don't ruin your time and not give you numbers that aren't precise. But
that's money that can be reinvested back into the district. That's money that can go for raises and go for programs and not have to cut all this stuff from the kids.
Absolutely. In the San Antonio region, and where we've been talking about implementing a regional approach in San Antonio, and Bexar County is really great because demographically it's a very similar demographic. Geographically, it's very similar. So you've got you had in the San Antonio area last year alone 60,000 kids approximately who experienced student mobility. On average, they miss 6 days of class. And now
60,000 kids.
60,000 kids.
And that's SAISD, not...
No, this is the San Antonio area. So it's San Antonio ISD, Northeast, North Side, and those are the largest ones. And then there's some smaller ones. There's 15 school districts in the San Antonio area.
Right.
And they're all being faced with it. So when you multiply those, 60,000 times 6, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of days of lost instruction.
Yeah.
And so in San Antonio, they're doing really cool things now. There's a wonderful organization called P16 Plus that is a consortium or a group of a nonprofit, the school districts, thought leaders in the area, including university professors and so on, and the private market, because what they're looking at is they're basically saying cradle to career. Mm-hmm. We want to create the next generation of workers and labor force in our community because, San Antonians are known to be very industrious and and Toyota's there, and Rackspace is there, and UTSA, for example, is becoming a cybersecurity center of the nation,
right,
in their education and so on. But they've got to have the skilled labor force that can attract employers to the region.
See, but are we doing that in the primary schools? Because I just don't see us doing that in the primary school.
Well, we are. Well, San Antonio is. I can speak firsthand because I've met with them and I've seen what they're doing, and I'm also very good friends with San Antonio State Rep Diego Bernal, who's just an absolute genius. Man, I can't tell you how much I enjoy being around him. He's a true believer. He comes from San Antonio, and he's very highly focused on education. He's met with all the school districts and so on. And so P16 Plus and the whole San Antonio area is working on the idea of cradle to career. How do we get universal pre-K, which Julian Castro, when he was mayor, passed? And so they're working collectively and very strongly, and I've been at some of their meetings with their board, and these ladies and gentlemen are just, for lack of a better way to say it, rock stars in what they do. They really absolutely care. And so they're looking at how can we build the workforce. And what Doyle and I have got them to understand is that one of the profound problems that you have is that student mobility is effectively limiting your ability in your region to attract those kind of jobs and get the thought leaders and raise people from the standard of living which historically they have not been able to achieve. Mm-hmm. So we've got to proactively identify that. So Doyle and I have worked on a approach, if you will. It's a 3-in-1 approach,
right,
that we have created to proactively engage on student mobility. And we are seeing positive effects in Austin ISD, which we were very fortunate was our first client. And so we were able to really fine-tune the system, figure out where it's working, what we can do better, and so on. And so there's a couple of things that we learned. And one of them I learned a very long time ago. If you're trying to implement change in an organization, there's two precedents that have to happen for you to be successful. One is that it's incumbent upon you to show people that it can be effective. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then human nature being what human nature is, you have to make it as effortless as you possibly can.
Sure.
So to do it. So what we created is a system. From the very beginning, Doyle and I, and we've been on the same page forever. It's so much fun to work with him. Is that the last thing that we wanted to do was create a system where principals and teachers would say, here's one more thing I got to do.
Right.
I've got to deal with this program on student mobility, which of course they care and they know that it's a problem. But does
the money affect their thinking at all? It's a lot of money.
I think that of course, superintendents and school districts are mindful of the monies that they're spending and the monies that they're losing to student mobility.
Right.
And of course, the teachers are members of the community, and they know that that's coming out of their how effective they are as citizens of the community. That they're losing money. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely. But the truth of the matter, and it should be, is that it's really about the days lost. And those are kids that you cannot, that they're not there to teach.
Let's dive into that for a hot second, because
sure.
There's details. To to the listeners that are hearing this that have never really been in the environment, and maybe they're lucky enough to be in a really nice neighborhood or whatever.
Yeah.
I taught school at LAUSD for about 3 years, substitute taught down South Central for a while.
Oh, cool.
So I saw a lot of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so when we talk about like the reasons why kids are moving, you made a point to me a while ago that it just stayed with me. Like, if their rent goes up by $100, the family's got to move. And they're not terribly cognizant of what district they're in. They're going to go for the best price apartment or whatever. And, the point you made to me a while ago that, they can't afford movers. So, kid's 10 years old, he's a mover. Yeah. He's 12 years old, he's moving. He's a mover. Yeah. So that's like 6 to 10 days. Kids out of school, they're moving, and it's not a bad thing, or I shouldn't say this. It's not a slight on the parents, but the education to a lot of parents in this type of a bracket, 91% economically disadvantaged. Yeah, education's sort of like, I got to put the kid in school or they're going to put me in jail. They're not terribly, like, that's how it was in South Central. It's like, my fucking kid's got to be in school. And then, but it wasn't like a priority. Yeah. Like when I was a kid, my dad was off the boat and we were going to go to college, goddammit, and he would whack you in the fucking head to make sure you did it. Okay. So, and God bless him. I mean, my one brother, straight A's, naturally. Me, it was like just beating a mule to just stay in school. I was going to drop out. I was going to drop out of college like 3 different times. I barely graduated. You know? So that being said, my parents were cognizant. They were there. A lot of these parents, the kids, despite their best intentions, don't have a whole lot of support on top of economic challenges, food insecure. A lot of our kids going to school food insecure. I had so many kids come to my classes. Yeah, make sure you bookmark that because I hope that we get to touch on that. We will, definitely, because I have that note. And we can talk about that later. But so like, for example, food insecure. I mean, I had so many kids come into my classes and it was so foreign to me, even though I grew up in that area. Yeah. They didn't have a breakfast and they're passing out by homeroom. Kind of hard to learn when you're hungry, isn't it? Starving to death, man. Yeah. And some of these kids would be hungry almost the whole weekend. Sure. Because their meals were at the school. Yeah. They got no dinner, breakfast and lunch. So let's talk a little bit about that and how you guys address that problem and what you think Well, no, it's an excellent point because ultimately, what children need to succeed in life, which at its most basic is just to live a decent life. They need housing, they need access to food and healthcare, and not only healthcare, but that includes behavioral stuff too. And side note, we are developing a platform now that's in beta, that it's only administrators who we can figure out real time using Google Maps where children are living. It's really cool. I mean, it's some space age stuff. It's a cluster, and then you hit the cluster, and then it shows where all these kids are living. And we have a dashboard and we, of course, we don't know their names. It's private. We don't know who they are. Absolutely. But the school knows who they are. Right. And so we're able to identify to the street level, to the apartment complex, where kids are. And so that helps school districts to marshal their resources in a more cost-effective manner so that you can put the food banks near. Or you've got kids and you figure out that they're having trouble with math or reading, and you've got like 70 kids in one apartment complex. Right. And then you talk to the apartment complex and say, we want to put our tutors here after school, incentivize the parents to send them, and so you're able to marshal your resources more effectively. But I digress. To the point about student mobility, let's break down how it is affecting families, school districts, and the community at large. So what do I mean by that? What I discovered as I was delving into it, I studied political science and philosophy at UT, University of Texas at Austin. I'm a Longhorn. And so I'm a policy guy. I really get into the minutia
of stuff. And what I discovered is that there's a paralysis of analysis on the subject. We have known the effects of student mobility on kids' well-being 20 years now.
Before you even got into this game.
Before I even got into the deal.
Yeah.
There's a wealth of information in academia and the Department of Education and so on, and yet people don't act on it because what is it? It's somebody else's problem. No, it's our
problem.
It's not a problem. It's our responsibility.
That's right.
It is our responsibility. So we know, for example, that when a child moves from their school at an early age, they're much more likely to have to repeat a grade, to have behavioral problems,
Right.
drug problems, teenage pregnancy, and essentially not graduate from high school.
Right.
We know these numbers, and I won't bore you with the numbers because once you get into data, people are like, right? I mean, it happens. And if anybody wants to get in contact with me, Rafael at mobilityblueprint.com, I'll send you whatever you want to read about
those
it.
of you who don't know, Raphael's name is spelled the same way as Rafael Ted Cruz's name, so there's that.
You had to go there, didn't you?
I did.
You had to do that.
I've had a few beers. Why not?
Yeah, well, I guess so.
Because people don't spell well these
yeah.
days, and that's a problem with student mobility.
So we know that kids who move, in particular in elementary, but no, in middle school and high school and that sort of thing,
Of course.
they have problems.
Sure.
We also know that there is an effect at the campus level. And to give you an idea, you've got an underperforming school. You've got a school district whose superintendent and all the staff and the senior leadership are said, we're going to do something about that. By golly, we're going to do something about it this next year. So we're going to put our best teachers, we're going to put our resources into this school. We're going to rock it. And then what happens is during the school year, so say it's 850 kids elementary, which is pretty standard.
Yeah, average school.
You've got 200 kids who are going to leave during the course of the school year.
For 6 days at $40 a pop.
And they're going to leave that school. They're going to go to another school. And during the school year, you have 200 new kids who have come to a school of 850 kids.
And you integrate
How
them.
do you teach them? Yeah, the
Right.
teacher doesn't know them.
Right.
She or he doesn't know anything about them.
Right.
Now, effectively, what are you doing? There's two things that happen. You are either spending more time with that individual child to get him and her up to speed, and you only have X amount of time with your kids, so you're not spending time with the rest of the class, so you're slowing them down, or vice versa.
And let me ask you a quick side note here. What is the issue with increased class sizes in the districts you deal with?
Well, let's just
Because that affects what a teacher can do in a class.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about that, but let's just stay on this story for a second because
okay.
I think it's important in terms of student mobility. Not that your question is not important, but I think in terms of student mobility. So what happens is that you are taking away from other kids, not giving a kid enough attention, and then another thing that you get is burnout. Teachers, they're being effectively graded by whether their kids did well on standardized testing and all the other stuff. And these teachers burn out, man, because you're grading them by something that they cannot control, which is that children are leaving during the course of the school year, and that's not the teacher's fault. It's nobody's fault, obviously, but so you've got burnout. The campus level is suffering.
A reason. There's no fault.
Yeah.
But there's a reason.
And then of course there's the 6 days lost instruction and the monies that come from that. But this principal set me to the side in Austin ISD a couple of years ago, and she said, "Oh, Rafa, you don't even understand. So I've got a Latino family. Mama's got 3 kids. So what ends up happening, it's not one kid, it's a family of 3 kids, for example.
Right.
You've got one family whose children have lost, 18 days of school.
Right. And that's an excellent point to make, because a lot of people are listening to this going, well, one kid, but you're looking at a family.
A family.
2, 3, 4,
yes,
5 kids in some cases.
Absolutely.
Right. And they're all jamming out of the district.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there's the loss. So, and by the way, we're the only partner to a school, a vendor, if you will, who will make a school district money. Because what we did is we created a system where we do all the work. As I mentioned at the beginning, you've got to make it as easy, and we do all the work. So what we did, and if you think of it as a narrative, we train key staff on the telltale signs of student mobility, because a custodian, for example,
right,
will hear this child saying, "Oh, I'm leaving. We're moved." Well, no, you want to proactively identify families that are at risk for leaving the school, and before they move.
Right.
We create materials for the teachers to interact with the parents. We do it in different languages: Spanish, Vietnamese, Polish, whatever the community,
Sure.
there's a large enough. Student mobility matters. If you have to move, let your school know.
Right.
Let your school know. The second part of it is that we have a community engagement module, which is to say it may not take a village to bring up a kid, but it certainly takes a community. So we want all the clinics, the churches, the ethnic grocery stores, everybody to let parents know. The echo chamber: if you have to move, let your family know. Hey, I just created a song. If you have to move, let your family know. But on a serious level, But on a serious level, we want the community to know. So then, what happens? We have a community engagement module.
Right.
We're training staff, interacting with the parents, etc.
Okay.
So they'll come to the school, and they'll say, "I recognize that student mobility can adversely affect my child, and we have to move." And the school says, great. So what we created, Abe, is we created a platform using Google Maps infrastructure, because here's the funny thing. Poorer people may not have computers in their house, but they have smartphones.
They all do, yeah.
Yeah. So we created a Google Maps infrastructure, and we have the district all the way to the individual school boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the yellow pins
Right.
that we're also accustomed to
I
seeing.
see the site. It's genius.
Yeah, and so what you do, we have all the available real-time rental listings at the boundary level, and you hit over the pin, and a little bubble window shows up, and it has, if it's an apartment, we've got real-time listings of availabilities and vacancies. Mm-hmm. We've got 2-bedroom, here's what the rent is, here are the amenities. 3-bedroom, here's how many vacancies there are. If it's affordable housing, here's what it is, here's the contact information. And then the cool thing is the thing that strikes me about being a technology guy, you've got a platform, a software as a service.
Sure.
And but most school districts or clients get maybe 3 or 4 licenses. Not with us. Everybody has a license to use our platform. The families can use them.
Wow.
And so it's real time. We're not a 9-month program, for example.
You're year long.
Year long.
Right.
24/7, 365 days a year. Families can use it. They can utilize it. And we're not telling them, hey, we're not telling you can't move. But at the very least, you understand that student mobility can adversely affect your child.
Right.
So what we're suggesting to you is try to find something within the boundary that's close to school. And then, if they're not able to find a place, then we can figure out where they're moving to.
Right.
So instead of losing 6 days of school, they're going to lose 2 days of school, because at the end of the day, and I've been, my mama provided for us and did a wonderful job as a Spanish immigrant. We were working class, and when you have to move, man, there's not moving trucks.
No, you're it.
The burro right here, the shoulders, you're moving the stuff. And they're going to have to do that. But you know what? They're only going to lose 2 days.
Not
because
6.
they're going to, and the paperwork and everything that accompanies them that is psychographic and demographic, and their scores are going to accompany them as well.
Okay.
So that we mitigate the days lost. So they lose 2 days of school. So within your school district, you're not losing as much money, but more importantly, you're not losing as many days of lost instruction. So what does that do? It decreases student mobility. It increases academic performance for the student and the campus as a whole. It improves student attendance because that's affected by student mobility. And in my opinion, it fosters individual, school, and community well-being. It decreases the number of dropouts, and it retains revenue to the school district.
Right.
So we're doing it all together in one shot, and I can't tell you how much joy it gives me that we're helping families.
Right.
That we're helping our community.
Well, and this, I want to jump into something else that we decided to piggyback, but
Sure.
Top 3 reasons people move out of a district. Top 3 reasons student mobility is 6 to 10 days. The top 3 reasons.
Well, so, these are macroeconomic things that are going on,
and that's what we're
right?
talking about. Not Texas, not San Antonio.
Affordable housing. And from our inception, Doyle and I looked at this, and it occurred to us that if we get this right, and I think that we have, and we continue to develop it, although having said that, it's organic. We don't want to be all things to all people.
You can't be.
We want to develop it organically for the individual community because it all shifts. But what's going on, it's the things that we've seen.
Right.
Is that you've got a working class family, 2 families in an apartment complex, and then the landlord busts them and figures out that there's 2 or 3 families, and so one of them's going to move. That is a big problem.
Right.
You've got, mom and dad split. They break up, and so one of the family members, typically the mother, has to move out with the kids. And so that's a massive problem.
Right.
Family gets a job on the other side of town, and they don't have great transportation.
Right.
And so they've got to move. All completely understandable. It really comes down to affordable housing that's going on with, and in Austin, where we are located right now.
Yeah.
This center of this city is being hollowed out by upper income, homogeneous community.
Code next, absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's just happening.
Sure.
And so what we want to do is we're putting down the flag and saying this is an ecosystem, and this matters to the well-being and the viability of your community. Hey, the flag is here, but we're not trying to be the answer. We're laying the flag. We know that we've been helpful.
Right.
We know that the communities in which we've worked have been more effective in hitting the numbers with the A through F law and those sorts of things. We know that. We know that because the school districts have informed us of it, and they're quite proud of what they're doing. But ultimately, it's going to have to be we, the people, that creates incentives to make sure that families stay within the campus, within the city, and make it easier for our kids. We've got to take more responsibility for children and their families than we're currently doing. We have to create tax incentives for developers, because a developer,
right?
I've been in the construction business. I ran a construction company in Brooklyn, New York for 4.5 years. Got laid off in technology, had to have a job. Next thing you know, I'm in the wild world of construction in New York City, and I can tell you that the profit margins are not that great in construction.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so we have to incentivize as a community, because I know developers who would absolutely do it.
Sure.
But they've got to feed their families too. Otherwise, they're moving.
Well, see, okay, and this gets into a couple of things I wanted to hop onto because, and this is more macro shit. Okay, so
Yeah.
just preface that right now.
Sure.
Which, what you're doing is important, and I'm talking about revenue now. Just straight revenue to the district.
Yeah.
But can there be more that we do on the federal level? And I'll give you an example. So here's a for instance. We spend $1.2 trillion on defense right now. Okay, we just gave Trump another $20 billion on top of the $750 billion we gave him last year, and he's supposed to be so crazy, but the Democrats keep laying down and giving him more money for defense. What if we took, meanwhile, China just upped their defense budget to $200 billion. The Russians spend $65 billion. We're spending $1 trillion on what? We're fine. Can't we take some money out of that and put it into the Department of Education, which I honestly believe, I can't prove this, this is a theory, not a fact, a conspiracy theory, but I honestly believe that when Reagan started the Department of Education in 1981, it was designed to destroy education in this country, go to charter schools, private schools, vouchers, and all that crap, and fuck over the very people that you're talking about. Because I think at the core of it, the conservative side, which is now the giant oligarchy, does not care about these kids that you're talking about. Can't we provide, for example, I know you just started doing this. You just started some preliminary ideas with HEB, for example, which is a big grocery store chain. Oh, okay. So we got food insecure kids here. Can't we develop a coupon system where you get a Costco, you get a Sprouts, and they kick in say $50 a month to the district, right? Or we do it out of our federal taxes. And this is where people completely get it baked into their brains that it's a bad thing. I'm like, wait, hang on. You go to Europe, they expect Medicare for all. They expect an education because that's part of their taxes.
Sure.
You and I are about the same age. I don't know what you pay to go to UT, but I went to Cal Poly Pomona. I paid $100 a quarter. It's not $5,000 a quarter.
Yeah.
And kids are going into debt. I can't get a kid a car loan at 18, but I can get him a fucking student loan for $50,000.
Yeah.
What can we do on a macro level to say, for example, fund some of these, to create some programs that a district like SAISD, for example, in addition to using your program to revenue, because it's a powerful program, what you're talking about. And I've seen your website. That map is fucking brilliant.
Thank you.
So what can we do on a macro level to ensure that districts like Austin Independent School District, San Antonio, Katy, all these, they can provide for the lowest among us? I didn't grow up rich.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad's illiterate. I mean, seriously. I mean, I'm the first guy in my family to graduate high school, and then I was the first guy to graduate college. In my family.
Good for you. Fist bump, buddy.
I never told you that. Yeah. No. So there you go. But all that,
awesome,
all that, and that's from an illiterate guy who came to this country 55 years ago, and my mom, who barely has a 9th grade Brazilian education from the 50s. They just saw the value in it, and they kicked our ass. Thankfully, I got 2 brothers that are doctors. Yes. But all that to say, it's the typical immigrant story. But it's also what you value, right? But sometimes when you're up against it, and the dollar's thin. What do you do? It's I got to feed my kid, or put him in school. They raise my rent $150 a month, or like you said, I'm three families deep into an apartment. They just kicked us out. So what can we do at a federal level to mitigate some of that?
Well, let's unpack that. There's a lot that I am not an expert on, and so I don't want to pretend that I am. So on HEB, and some of your listeners may not know who HEB is. HEB is one of the larger grocery retailers in Texas, and they are a phenomenal grocery chain in Texas. We're not working with them. It would absolutely be an honor to partner with them in some way. I have some ideas, but they do such cool things, and HEB is a shining example of a private company that takes its responsibility in the community a step further than most communities.
Very seriously. Yep.
For example, during Hurricane Harvey, they fed a bunch of people. They did an awesome job across Texas in education. And I'll butcher the numbers, and fact checkers can check it later and go, you missed it by here or there. But just throwing out some numbers. Right. Every year, HEB pays for, I think, is about a large number of administrators to go to Harvard to learn the latest, greatest ideas about education. They pay their stay.
Wow.
They pay their food and lodging.
Wow.
The food and lodging.
Yeah.
Their travel. And they bring them back to Texas. That is part and parcel of how you create a dynamic. Government cannot solve everything, but I do think that there is something about the best things that America has done that's made our country great. Is the partnership between private enterprise, government, and our institutions, the highways, getting humankind to the moon, all these wonderful things that we have done. And so I think that ultimately the answer lies somewhere in between that.
Well, I'm not talking about government necessarily, for example, solving our problem. I'm talking about...
But we the people do some really cool things.
Right.
We create education. We do all these things. I don't think... I'm...
So funnel the money to the people who know what they're doing and let them do it.
Yeah, because I can tell you that I've met administrators and superintendents in Fort Worth and Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and every one of these people and their senior leadership are dynamic, thoughtful, caring people who wake up in the morning and they absolutely want to do the best for their community that they can, and they have, these people are so bright. That they could have done other things. And potentially made more money. They want to teach children.
Right.
And so they get up there and they go for it and they do the best, and it's incredibly inspirational to be around them on a daily basis. Doyle and I, the funny thing about New York and Texas, Doyle and I, we'll get in a car at 5 o'clock in the morning from Austin to a meeting in Fort Worth.
That's right.
Or Dallas at 9. And that's 3 hours.
Yeah.
And we'll drive back right after that hour and a half meeting.
Right.
And man, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not very good at waking up at that time in the morning. But when I leave speaking with these administrators, I'm absolutely thrilled and enthused by the dedication and enthusiasm that they hold. It just really fires us up, and we fist bump. We're like, we're doing something cool today, that we might not otherwise. But Texas is so big, it takes a while to drive around, right?
Welcome to Texas, baby.
But then and then I do want to address, and this is more of a philosophical opinion, solely my opinion, not Doyle's, not our company's.
All right.
I really believe that all these politicos and these organizations, many of whom I disagree with politically, philosophically, but I will never question their desire to do good. My anecdotal and my philosophical underpinnings of the things that I've discovered in life is that the vast majority of people wake up in the morning and they want to do good just like you and me. So whether they're spending money on something that they find is a priority, if it's defense or whatever it is, I think we've got to get to the point where we find the commonality in each other and speak to it. And what Doyle and I do day in and day out is we use fact-based reasoning with a great business model that demonstrates to anybody who will listen, irrespective of their own political or socio-political belief system, is find that commonality about how we can, so if you're a conservative, for example, and money is your big thing, how can we save a school district money so that they can use those resources elsewhere? That is a conversation I'm absolutely prepared to have with somebody, and I have, and it's worked.
It always works because you're coming from the numbers. When 2 plus 2 is 4, you can't fuck with that.
Yeah.
I've done this a million times with the so-called conservatives. My day job is employee benefits. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And when I talk about single payer, for example, you get the conservative go, well, I don't want to pay for everybody. Well, listen, you say you're pro-business if you're conservative.
Yeah.
If I got a 50-life group, 50 human beings in a group, by law they have to buy insurance. If I said to that employer, look, I know you're paying $2 million a year, you have 50 people, you're paying $2 million a year, $1.5 million a year, I'm going to go ahead and wipe that out, and you're already paid for Medicare contribution that you're paying for on top of that. 10% higher.
There you go.
I go to the employee, you're paying $300 to $500, $1,000 a month. Okay, that $100 a month we take out of your check, now it's $120, and everybody gets Medicare. And if you get sick, God forbid, you're not paying 6 and 7 figures or 5 and 6 figures if you get sick and bankrupting you. That is pro-business. That is pro-numbers.
Oh, very cool.
Get the fairy tale out of it. Get the left-right out of it. Get that narrative out of that, baked into our brains out of it. Because that's what keeps us in a miniature dirt wars for years and years and years. And when you talk about the defense industry, for example, they know what they're doing. They know it's not good. But we need to ask better questions as a culture and make demands. That's the challenge that I put to anybody, especially any district looking at your program that has an issue with paying you guys. I'm like, wait a minute, what you're going to do for them and the community and what you're doing for kids at large, it's fucking huge.
And I'm not sure that I would use that exclamation mark at the end of your sentence.
That's my show.
But it is your show. And it's a fun show. But we're going to make the money. If they just follow the steps that we're implementing and just let us come in.
Sure, absolutely.
We're going to go to the PTA meetings. We're going to go to the carnivals and the fests and have our stuff. And we're going to be reaching out to families. We're going to do the work. If you just follow us, we're going to get you the outcomes that you need for kids. And you're not going to pay us. We're going to pay us. You just have to trust us.
Yeah, absolutely. And trust that you're going to be doing for the community.
And like any other business, you have to demonstrate the value.
Right.
And we do.
Right.
And I'm clear about that.
Well, see, and this is where I get to, and you and I have had these discussions with other people that we know. Like when people tell me things, for example, that sounds like communism. Well, first of all, communism and democratic socialism are two different things. Do you like the airports? My favorite example. If you like the airports, then you have to like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because the airport, Austin owns the airport here. If they did not own the airport and Southwest and United and American paid for the airport, my trip to LA for Christmas would be $1,600.
Yeah.
As it is, it's $200.
Yeah.
$135 last Christmas on Frontier Airlines. That's not a plug. I'm not paid by them. But all that to say, you like the airports, the airlines rent from the city or the county or the state. That's the cooperative at work. And so that's where if you say things like, I don't want my taxes going to whatever. Look at it as an investment, and secondly, don't look at these things as regulations or look at them not as regulations but as protections.
Yeah,
and that's where when you get into some like things what you're talking about here. When I'm talking about the feds, not that they should pay for everything, but they should at least funnel the monies to the proper channels of people that you're dealing with that you've talked about this whole almost hour now.
Yeah,
they know what they're doing. They know their community. Let them apply for the subsidy, do the paperwork, do what they got to do, GAO, whatever, and then they get the cash, and then they do what you're saying to do.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when we made a presentation at P16 Plus and San Antonio thought leaders, and there's a gentleman who's on the Dallas Fed, Charlie Amato, wonderful, iconic brilliant, thoughtful, successful Texas businessman, and he cares, man. He cares about kids. You could just see it on his face. He's totally into it. And when we made our presentation about how student mobility was affecting San Antonio,
Sure.
Charlie, and he's a numbers guy.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at what we brought up, and I could see the look on his face.
Right.
And so he's a member of the Dallas Fed, and he has recommended to his colleagues that we make a presentation on the effects of student mobility in Texas. Because here's what he told me. He said, we're already hitting the ceiling now. So, if you think about it, just from economics, I took a year of economics, almost minored in it, but fell in love with philosophy instead, and political science is my baby, so that wasn't going to change. But I have enough of an understanding. He said,
Sure.
It's supply, demand and supply. If Texas or any other community, wherever people are listening to this now, if you're going to attract the kind of high-end jobs that sustain a community, you have to have the skilled labor to pull it off. Why? Because wages, among other factors, one of them is if you have a huge pool of labor, you have a supply, so wages are going to be lower. So they're competitive. Texas is now hitting that ceiling, and you can't just keep importing people in. So what do people like Charlie? Charlie's thinking a generation, 2 generations ahead.
Right.
He wants, he's a Texan. He wants Texas to be that sort of economic beacon of the country. So
and leave the United States.
So he wants to lead the U.S. And so how are you going to do it?
Right.
How are you going to do it next generation, AI, and all those jobs that are coming around?
Sure,
the corners, you have to have skilled labor force. And when we did the numbers for the San Antonio area, he got it. And he said, can you demonstrate this throughout Texas? I said, absolutely. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
My words, not his.
Sure.
He's like, if we're going to get that next generation up, we have to deal proactively with student mobility. Now, Doyle and I are 2 humble, hardworking guys, and we're doing our level best.
Right.
And I think that what we do can effect change for generations to come. And we're laying the flag so that an ecosystem around it and thought leaders and that it's starting to happen now, but you've got historically silo effects between agencies and thought leaders. They're already breaking up. I know I see it in Austin.
Sure.
And in other communities. And we have to effectively break those silos down so that we can bring people together, the best and the brightest, to try to figure out how we can make sure that kids stay within their school and their feeder system so that they can be their potential for success and their outcomes are great. If you do that, if you pay attention to that, then your community is absolutely going to prosper.
Hey, listen, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for coming on the show.
Okay.
This has been
Thank you.
This has been
my pleasure.
This has been an honor and a blessing. No joke.
Oh,
this has
thank
been,
you
this
so
has been
much.
fucking great. So, but in wrapping up, and I'm going to ask you this question just in the sense of, most people have it baked in their brains. First question they say, well, who's going to pay for this? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Philosophically, what would you say to the listener? Hey, listen, this is what we got to do to move forward. We're not ranking high in the world right now in a lot of categories. What would you say to the listener? Hey, man, this is what we got to do moving forward.
Well, so it is a philosophical underpinning. I'm a philosophy guy. And so we have to, not say have to. I think what we want to do is that we want to demonstrate that we're all in this together. What we're doing is a philosophical underpinning that the school is demonstrating to parents, you matter. Doyle and I tell school districts, because Texas is predominantly, Latino.
Yeah.
somos familia. We're family.
Right.
We're in this together. You matter to us. Not only do you matter to us with words, but with deed. We're creating this database and this platform and these people and this training so that we can make sure that you stay in the school district. And that philosophical, we're in this together, man. We are on a planet rotating on an axis, going X miles an hour, surrounded by desert, one billionth of the universe and galaxies. Our galaxy is one billionth of everything that's out there. We have more in common with one another than we don't have in common.
Right.
And we want to be able to utilize that and look at what we have in common and start sharing as a community again. I'm old enough to remember when that was a thing. And I think we want to come back to that. And going back to what Doyle and I are doing with Mobility Blueprint, is we're demonstrating to families vis-a-vis our school districts, you matter. We know that this could potentially affect your child adversely, and we're doing everything proactively to make sure that we give you the best outcomes possible.
Listen, phenomenal, man. You got to come back on.
That was fun,
going on. That was awesome. Listen, guys, our guest has been Rafael Chldress. I can't say that. Chldress right now.
Rafa.
I've had a couple of beers, so there you go. But folks, again, if you want to be a bitter pill, you can. Go to patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. We've got a ton of shows on there for free. If you want to support the show, you're more than welcome. And always, as always, folks, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to, so sleep tight.